Well, it is good to see everyone this morning. Good to see a great group of people here visiting with us this morning. We want to welcome you, and we hope you're having a great time worshiping the Lord this morning at Mackville Christian Church. This morning, I'd like for you to take your Bibles and turn to Mark chapter 10, starting at verse 46. I'll be reading through verse 52 in just a few minutes. I'm going to be reading from the Christian Standard Bible. And the reason I chose that is for this morning is I usually preach from the English Standard, but when we have been giving Bibles to our young people of the last couple of years, we've been given the Christian Standard version, if I'm correct on that. And so that's why I've done that this morning. But we will be reading from the Christian Standard version. I think back to Monday, April 4th, 1983. Now, if you are a college basketball fan like I am, chances are you were going to be tuned in to the NCAA championship game that night, even though you probably knew who was going to win that night. You see, the University of Houston, ranked number 1 in the nation, and featuring future pro stars such as Clyde Drexler and Akeem Olajuwon. They would likely be winning their first championship that night because Houston, you see, had won 26 straight games. They had won every game in the NCAA tournament by at least 7 points. And on Saturday before, they had beaten Louisville 94-81 in the national semifinals. And Houston's opponent was one of the teams I kind of pull for sometime, North Carolina State. That was a team that had lost 10 games in the season and probably was in the tournament only because it got hot at the ACC tournament and won it. NC State had won 5 of its 8-point postseason games by 3 points or less. And they had been trailing, been behind inside the last minute of 6 of those 8 games. And yet they'd won them all. With just a few minutes left in the game, Houston led 52-45. But eventually NC State caught up and had the ball in the final seconds when something is supposed to happen, but we're having some problems. Here we go. This was supposed to come up. This happened. My tech person, also my wife, was trying a new system this morning, and it's had some glitches. Just go on to the next slide, Stephanie. Here you go. This is what happened. You may remember. What happened was North Carolina State was tied, had the ball, man shot an air ball by a man named Lorenzo Charles, grabbed the air ball and dunked just before the final horn went off, setting off a wild celebration. Folks, you're reminded of that every year if you watch the NCAA tournament. Have you seen that video many times before? You've seen it every year because they are always showing that celebration. It was such a happy time. Coach Jim Valvano was just running around looking for somebody to hug. But then, less than 10 years later, Coach Valvano gave his now famous speech at the ESPY Awards. Come on, there you go. Now we're caught up. He was at the ESPY Awards. If you remember, Coach Valvano had contracted or had developed cancer. And by the time he gave this now famous speech, he was fighting cancer. His body was full of tumors. But he talked about his fight and about living every day. And he said in another speech that his favorite line before he won the NCAA tournament was that a writer had said elephants would drive in the Indianapolis 500 before North Carolina State will win the NCAA tournament. He later said, I guess elephants are driving in Indianapolis this year. But then he closed this great speech, one that has resonated with people over and over again. And he said, don't give up. Don't ever give up. Coach Valvano died less than 2 months later at age 47. But he said, don't give up. Don't ever give up. Today I'm deviating a little bit from our series that we've been looking at, the Revelation churches in chapters 2 and 3. I'm deviating a little bit because today is Youth Sunday. And I want to talk with our youth. I'll be gone next Sunday, taking a vacation Sunday. Mr. Sonny Fentress, who some of you know, will be speaking for me. He'll be talking about the Gideon's International. Wonderful, wonderful ministry. But we'll be getting back to Revelation chapter 2 in 2 weeks when I'm back on October 13th. But we think about this. Never give up. How many times are we told that as Christians? We're told that exhortation, especially given the length of eternity. You think about it. Eternity is a very long time. We can't comprehend it. But did you realize this idea, don't give up, don't ever give up, is something we should have in our lives every day. As I was pulling this sermon together, I was obviously trying to find something to say to our young people. But then when I looked out, I started thinking, I said, you know, if I just speak to our young people, I'm going to be omitting people who are geezers like me. You know, no, seriously. I wanted to make something to make sure that everyone here could relate to it. And I think about what I'm going to be talking about this morning is something that will relate to your lives, whether you're age 5 or 95. And I want you to read along with me from Mark chapter 10, verses 46 through 52, as we talk about this man who wouldn't give up. Mark chapter 10. They came to Jericho, and as he was leaving Jericho with his disciples and a large crowd, Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus, a blind beggar, was sitting by the road. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. Many warned him to keep quiet, but he was crying out all the more, have mercy on me, son of David. Jesus stopped and said, call him. So they called the blind man and said to him, have courage, get up. He's calling for you. He threw off his coat, jumped up, and came to Jesus. Then Jesus answered him, what do you want me to do for you? Rabboni, the blind man said, I want to see. Jesus said to him, go, your faith has saved you. Immediately he could see and began to follow Jesus on the road. Very simple. Just cry out to Jesus for your greatest need. Remember that. If you'd like to follow along, the outline is on the back of your bulletin. Take notes and all. But remember to always cry out to Jesus for your greatest need. You see, what this passage teaches is that our blessings in Jesus Christ, they commence with our pursuit of Him. And that requires us to push ourselves. To push ourselves in pursuit of Jesus Christ. So this morning I want to share some ideas with you. One is go where you should. Go where you should. If you're going where you should, you're going to be like this man, this blind man, who wouldn't give up. He was blind, yet he still pursued Jesus. You think about that. Read along with me again. starting in verse 46 again. He says, Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus, a blind beggar, was sitting by the road. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. He had heard, have mercy on me. Excuse me. You see, this is a man who had heard about Jesus. That's obvious. That's obvious because he says, Jesus, son of David. He's using a term that's about the Messiah. This is somebody who knew a little bit about Jesus, or knew a little bit about the Messiah who was coming. He said, Jesus, have mercy on me. He knew that Jesus was like none other. And he called out, Jesus, son of David. Even though his knowledge was incomplete, he knew that Jesus was like none other, didn't he? He knew that Jesus was like no other person. And young people and old people alike, remember to pursue Jesus. He's like none other. But the main thrust of this passage is very simple. This man said, Jesus could help me. I'm blind. I've heard these stories. He probably even knew the fact that Jesus had already healed other blind people. So what did he say? Have mercy on me. You know, it can be easy though, I think, to overlook a nice little detail of this story. If you back up to the very beginning of verse 46, look what it says. They came to Jericho, and he was leaving Jericho with his disciples and a large crowd. Bartimaeus, son of Timaeus, blind beggar, was sitting by the road. This was a man who was unable to work. They didn't have welfare at that time. They didn't have assistance. So what did he do to live? He was a beggar. He was a beggar. And so somebody who's asking somebody to help when they're begging, an important thing is to stake out a good spot. Where are beggars today? They're where people are. You know, it's rare. It's rare, you know, for me at least, to go into the Walmart parking lots, to not see somebody at the entrance asking, you know, holding up a sign saying, I need help. I need help. And you know, that's what people do when they're in that situation. Now, we can't know for sure if this man knew for sure that Jesus would be the one that's coming through. But you got to remember, this was just before the Passover. And if you look at the book of Mark, the very next thing he talks about is when Jesus makes his triumphal entry into Jerusalem. So, he had to know something here. The people back then, of course, they didn't have social media, they didn't have television, they didn't have all these things. But how does news really spread fast? Word of mouth. And so I'm sure that by word of mouth, it was out, Jesus is coming down this road. So I can't be 100% certain, but I suspect that this man, Bartimaeus, had a good reason to believe that Jesus would be passing right by where he was staked out. And that's a very strong lesson for us. He was pursuing Jesus. He went where he knew Jesus would be. You think about that. You see, this man couldn't get around very well, but he was near a main road. He went there. He didn't give up. He didn't give up in his pursuit of Jesus. He didn't say, I'm a blind man. I can't do anything. He pursued Jesus with how best he can. And he cried, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. So, how do you encounter Jesus? We have to pursue Jesus. We have to go after him. We have to follow Jesus. Do all we can to find Jesus. Do what we can. It starts in our home. Make sure our home is one that prioritizes knowing Jesus Christ. Young people, parents, grandparents, all need to pursue Jesus as the best we can. And that starts in your own. How do we fill our minds? Do we spend our time studying the Word, doing what we can to have a better understanding of Jesus, or do we fill it with other things? I started thinking about that. And back in those prehistoric days when I was growing up, if you can remember, most people, we had our TVs. And those of you who, many of you can remember this, how many channels could you watch? 3. If you had a very good antenna, you might get 6 in this area. You might be able to get the Lexington and Louisville stations. You might get 6. But then, of course, I listened to the radio, and I knew every station. And I could listen to anything that was out there. I listened to country music. I listened to Christian music some. I listened to everything from Elvis to the Electric Prunes. And folks, yes, there was a group called the Electric Prunes when I was growing up. Believe it or not. You can look it up. I listened to everything. And then when you had those things, you know what? My parents made me go to church all the time, and I'm thankful for that. But it was still easy to get distracted. Have you ever thought about how easy it is to get distracted? I'm not proud to admit, you know, I was at church all the time, but I could have probably told you more about the latest episode of Laverne and Shirley than I could have about my relationship with Jesus Christ. And I can't imagine what our young people, many of them over here this morning, that's why I'll keep looking this way. But I can't imagine what our young people are experiencing today with the distractions. I was just curious, and so I pulled it up on the computer. I did a Google search, and you realize, yeah, I had 3 TV channels. You realize that today there's over 1,700 unique TV networks. 1,700. There's over 30 social media platforms that have over 100 million users. I'm talking about 30 with 100 million. I'm not even talking about platforms with less than 100 million. 30 of them. There's video gaming. I couldn't even give you the number. Music. You can listen to whatever you want, whenever you want these days. And I'm going to tell you, there's nothing right or wrong about any of those things per se. You know what makes it right or wrong? It's how we use them. How do we use these things? Folks, please don't let anything hinder your pursuit of God. Nothing. Bartimaeus was a blind man. He didn't let that hinder him. He went where he should. But persist also. Persist more than you thought you could. Persist more than you thought you could. I love the picture that's painted in this passage we read. Start again. Look what it said. He began to cry out, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Many warned him to what? Keep quiet. But he was crying out all the more, have mercy on me, Son of David. Many warned him, keep quiet. It's not going to happen. You're not going to talk to Jesus. We're not going to let you. They tried to muzzle him. So what did he do when they muzzled him? Tried to muzzle him. He yelled even louder. He yelled even louder. Because you see, by this time, Jesus was a well-known figure. And this guy knew about Jesus. And so he was shouting above the crowd. And he was extremely, extremely persistent. My question to you is, are you persistent in pursuing God? See, the world is going to try to stop you, just like the crowd tried to stop this man Bartimaeus. And if you're vocal in your pursuit of Christ, chances are somebody's going to say, stick to Sunday. You know, I don't want to hear this. Some are going to try to get you to do other things, to distract you, to pull you away. But you see, we have to persist. The world is going to give you things that don't matter. It's going to give you things that don't matter. Folks, I hope that we understand that. Things are things. Things can be replaced. I hope that nobody here suffered much damage Friday night when the remnants of Hurricane Helene came through. So in my house, all we did was we had a few limbs blown down, so nothing. I can't imagine what some people are going through. What happened around here pales in comparison to what happened in Florida, Georgia, North Carolina. A dear friend of ours who lives in the Tampa area put on Facebook yesterday that they had damage. She said, these are things, they can be replaced. A dear friend of mine that I went to college with had a son that lives in a nephew that lives in East Tennessee who lost everything except his own life. Lost everything he had. What happened to us pales in comparison. But you know something? Even those people, as difficult and as tragic as it is, those things can be replaced. Eternity with Jesus cannot be replaced. You're either going to be with Him or you're not. That's the ultimate thing that we must persist about. You see, Jesus made by the Bartimaeus, this blind man, He made him see. And look what Bartimaeus did. Look at verse 52. Immediately he could see and began to follow Jesus on the road. Pursuing Christ means being persistent in our search. It means searching and learning the Word. It means prioritizing, being together in worship, being together in Sunday school. We're having some great times in Sunday school right now. I hope you'll take part. Our young people, we got a great program at Epic on Wednesday night. Persist in being here. Prioritize. It takes effort. But just like Bartimaeus, that every effort to pursue Jesus is worth every bit of it. And finally, live like you never thought you could. We'll be very quick on this. Think about this story. This is the climax. This is the climax of it. Look at starting in verse 49. Jesus stopped and said, call him. The people tried to shut him up. But he said, call him. Call him. So they called the blind man and said to him, have courage, get up. He's calling for you. He threw off his coat, jumped up, and came to Jesus. Then Jesus answered him, what do you want me to do for you? Rabboni, the blind man said, I want to see. Jesus said to him, go, your faith has saved you. Immediately he could see and began to follow Jesus on the road. There's so many cool things here. These people tried to keep him quiet. Jesus said, come to me. And so when he did, you think about what this man did. He was so excited. He jumped up, jumped out of his cloak. He was so excited. This was a blind man going to Jesus. A man who couldn't see, but he knew where Jesus was. He was going to him. And when Jesus said to him, what do you want? And he said, I want to see. You see, Bartimaeus may have not known his ultimate need of salvation, but he knew something. What did he know? He knew I need to see, and I know that Jesus can do this for me. I know that. And when that happened, what did Jesus say? He said, your faith has saved you. Your faith has saved you. You think about it. You think about the predicament all of us in if we have not met Jesus. Read with me 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verses 3 and 4. But if our gospel is veiled, it is veiled to those who are perishing. In their case, the God of this age has blinded the minds of the unbelievers to keep them from seeing the light of the gospel of glory of Christ, who is the image of God. I also think about what Jesus said to the church at Laodicea in Revelation chapter 3. And we're going to be looking at this in more detail in a few weeks. But he said, for you say, I am rich. I have become wealthy and need nothing. And you don't realize that you are wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. See, we're all sinners. And we're separated from God. If we sin, we're separated from God. There's nothing else we can do to get back into that relationship other than pursue Jesus and say, Jesus, have mercy on me. You see, Bartimaeus was a man in need, a need that only Jesus could meet. And every one of us have a need. Every one of us have a need of salvation. And only one can meet that need, and who is that? It's Jesus. It's Jesus. Folks, to our young people especially, you know, I love going to Camp Calvary to the youth rallies. They start singing. I don't know most of the songs that they're singing, but man, they're excited, and I absolutely love it. Young people and old, don't let the world take away the joy of following Jesus. The world is going to tell you to gratify yourself, pursue other things. The world is going to tell you that it's not worth it to pursue Jesus. I'm just here to tell you, and I'm not going to go any further than this, the world is wrong. The world is wrong. Don't let the world take away your joy of serving Jesus. But I'm going to also say something here. Don't let the church take the joy of pursuing Jesus. You see, that might seem odd to say, but who were the men who were trying to stop Bartimaeus? It was the people who were with Jesus. They were saying, be quiet, be quiet. It seems odd, but so many well-meaning Christians put a damper on our enthusiasm for Jesus, just like the people tried to silence Bartimaeus. Don't let them. If you want to be excited for the Lord, you know what? Be excited. Be excited. If you want to raise your hands and worship and praise, do so. If you want to tell people about Jesus, do so. If you want to give a testimony during worship, do so. Just let me know a little in advance so we can make the arrangements in the worship hour. But just tell us if you want to. Just do anything. Share the gospel. Add that joy and enthusiasm. Don't let anyone steal that enthusiasm for Jesus. This morning, I'm going to close. I'm going to tell you a story about an old preacher that I knew years ago. I didn't know if the man's still alive. You know, I've lost contact with him. But he was down in North Carolina, and I can still remember hearing him preach a sermon. And he said, there's times I want to go to church and tell the people and get in front of the congregation and say, 2 bits, 4 bits, 6 bits, $1 all for Jesus. Stand up and holler. You old people, you remember that cheer? 2 bits, 4 bits, all for our team. Stand up and holler. Stand up and holler for Jesus. Be excited. Persist in that pursuit. Persist in your pursuit of Jesus. Persist in your pursuit of serving Him. And as we said at the very beginning, just as Coach Valbano of North Carolina State said about other things, apply that to your life as a Christian. Don't give up. Don't ever give up. Live like you never thought you could. Let's pray.